You're listening to the Earth Xperience podcast.
My name is John J. Davis, and I don't really have a title, I guess. I've got a bachelor's from the University of Colorado. I have a master's from for Webster University, but I don't really use them in what I do now. And I am a dad. My wife and I have two boys, 23 and 22, and we live in Colorado. And I spend my time sharing my near-death experience with anybody who is willing to listen to me. So I so appreciate you inviting me on your podcast. Who I am now is I am much more spiritually oriented than I used to be. Before I had my NDE, I had never really had any experiences. So when I had my near-death experience, it radically changed how I approached my life. I am much more concerned about helping others, trying to make a difference with my life, wanting to share my message and give people the kind of hope and comfort that it gave me all those years ago. So I'm just really a different person now, very interested in trying to make a difference and giving it everything I've got to share my story with anybody who will listen.
Who were you before? Like, how will you describe yourself before? Because there seems like, and even in the beginning, are you dedicating your life to telling this story? Are there any other parts of your life that you lean into, any careers, or is this like really like this is your life calling now to have experienced this and now share it? When you describe this, you're more spiritual now. What was your relationship with faith or religion before this experience?
Sure. That's a great question. When I was little, my dad would take my sister and I to church. We grew up Catholic, and my dad was really Catholic. We used to go to church sometimes 2 or 3 times during the week, and then also on Sundays. So I was always exposed to religion, but it never really addressed concerns that I had about what happens when we die. And one of the pivotal things that happened to me was when I was 11 years old, my great grandmother Grace died, Grandma Grace, and we went to her funeral. And back then, what they did is they would have the service and they had the casket in the back, and everybody would stand up and they would walk past the casket to say their goodbyes. Well, I remember when it was my turn and I walked up there, I just remember looking at her and thinking, because she died, that cannot be the end of who she is. All the things that she loved, her sense of humor, her passions, her joys, all that can't just be gone. And it became this obsession for me to learn about there's got to be more out there than what we're told through religion. And Catholicism never really gave me any kind of specifics about what happens when we actually pass. So I was very different. I was very religionistic back then, but now I am just much more spiritual oriented because it's no longer a belief that I believe that life exists after death. Now it's an absolute knowing because I saw it. I saw where we go, and I know for a fact that nobody ever really dies because the soul never dies. And that's kind of how my whole story started with my grandma Grace's passing.
Now, how old were you when Grandma Grace passed away?
I was 11 when she passed.
Okay. And how old were you when you had your near-death experience?
I was 21.
Okay.
And Danny, something I'll tell you that's really interesting is people always ask me, how do you have such good recall? And I think it's because it has to be a God thing, because I usually have a really bad memory. But I can remember every single detail of everything I saw. I was only 21 when this whole thing happened. It was back in 1987. But I remember every detail, everything I saw, everything people told me, like it happened yesterday. And I can't explain how that's possible. So I think that was something that God gave me to be able to tell people exactly what I saw.
So Grandma Grace dies and you don't have your near-death experience. So you're navigating through life just trying to figure out what happens after death because you're inspired by this case. What was your day to day as far as relationship with God? Like, did you continue to believe in the Catholic faith? Did you try any other belief systems? Is there anything more that you can recall from that time period of like even searching, or what type of resources or routes did you take to try to find those answers that came up for you after her death?
Yeah. One of the things that I did that always seemed to help me the most and made me feel closest to God was going to the beach in Northern California. I would go to the beach all the time with my family, and I would sit there, watch the waves, and I would just talk to God, tell him my fears, my worries, my concerns. I was always, I always believed in God, but it wasn't until after my NDE that I really started to realize that God is so much closer to us than we ever really realize. We always think that God is somewhere out there, that he's not close to us, but he is. And what's so extraordinary is that he wants to have a relationship with us. He wants us to be close to him, to talk to him, to tell him our fears, our worries. And I just always, after my NDE, it just became so much easier to feel like he knows everything about all of us. He wants us to have a good life, to have a life where we learn and grow and develop. And I just, after my NDE, it was almost like I had a relationship like talking to my own dad. Just talk all out loud, pray all the time, and it just made a huge difference for me in terms of believing and knowing that we really have a creator that loves us and cherishes us and really wants us to enjoy our lifetimes here.
This is interesting because you mentioned knowing, and I keep hearing the language knowing as people tell their stories. And before you had like the knowing after your NDE experience, you mentioned that there is a belief that you had in God. Why did you think you believed in God at that point? Was it because of your upbringing, or was there any other feelings that you generated before you actually had the NDE that gave you power in believing in God? Like, why would you say you believed in God at that point?
Yeah, when I was being raised and we were always going to church, I was raised to fear God, to be, to fear God. If you don't live a good enough life, you're going to be sent, to a dark place when you die. So I never really felt like I had any kind of a close relationship with God or even having any kind of understanding about God. Because religion, I think every religion has a little bit of truth to it, but not any religion has all the truth. And religion just doesn't tell us how loving God really is. And when I had the NDE, when I was on the other side, this craziest thing, and I don't know how to explain it, but when you're over there, you can feel God. You can feel how much he loves and cherishes every single one of us. And I had never felt that in life before my NDE. In fact, what it feels like when you're here on Earth, it feels like you're in a battle and you're in a foxhole without a radio. You're cut off. That's what it feels like to be here on Earth. But on the other side, everywhere that you go, you have this feeling, this inner knowing that God is everywhere, that it's this presence. And that is what I think most of us miss when we come here to Earth in a lifetime, because we no longer have that feeling that we have on the other side. And I think it's one of those feelings that we all long for all of our life, and we don't really know what it is. But there's a longing that is inside of us that says there has to be something more. And with my NDE, I was finally able to help satisfy that craving and knowing that there really is a place we go to when we pass. If you want to call it heaven or the other side, the afterlife, it's a real place that God created for all of us. And it's all there when we finish our lifetime.
So let's get closer to the actual experience,
Sure.
but not too close. Right before you had the experience, what was the day like? Like, what was going on in that day?
I'll give you the background. What actually happened, what started this whole thing off, was my dad was in sales. his whole career. And one of these years, he won a sales contest. And part of what he won were these two mopeds, or what we would call scooters now. And we used to ride these all over the neighborhood all the time. Well, one day I was out riding and I had an accident and I slammed into a tree. And the way that I landed, I tore the tendons off my right hand and I needed to go have surgery to reattach them. Well, I was only 21 and I'd never had surgery before. I never had really spent any time in a hospital. So I didn't know what to expect. So my mom drives me down to the hospital or to the clinic. And when they start to prep me for the surgery, when they gave me the anesthesia, I had some kind of a horrible reaction and it stopped my heart and I physically died. And after that, I went and I had this, what we now call a near-death experience that completely changed my entire life. Well, I was gone for 7 minutes, but it felt like I was over there for an hour or two. It felt like forever. Because I had all these different experiences. I saw all these different things, saw these people, what people told me, but it felt like I was there for a long time. And that's when I realized that the other side, they don't have time like we do here on Earth. We have linear time where you've got to be here at a certain time. You've got to go to work at a certain time. They don't have that over there. And what's really interesting is for them, when they look at a lifetime, an entire lifetime feels like 3 or 4 months for people on the other side. But for us, we could be here 80, 90 or more years, and it's a long time. So the time is different, and I don't understand how that works. All I know is that it's somehow different.
It feels like you might label this experience like a heaven experience. How would you communicate what it felt like when you first got there? Like what was happening, what was going on? And then also, like, as you mentioned, like there's a sense of time and understanding. Is this because you were interacting with people or beings for amount of time and it felt like forever, but you got to know what it was like in this experience? Like how did you start to put language to this is how it is on that side based off of this, I guess clinically 7 minute
Yeah,
experience?
yeah. Well, I'll give you exactly how this whole thing happened. So I physically died, and the very next second, I woke up and I was standing in the most beautiful building I have ever seen. It was this long, so long building. It was so long I couldn't see the end of it, and it was made of beautiful white polished marble. And I looked over to my right, and there were these tall, maybe 20 or 30 feet high marble columns all the way down as far as you could see, maybe 6 feet apart. In the middle of this big building were these marble tables, like the size of an average kitchen table, all the way down about 6 feet apart as far as you could see. And there were two people sitting at every one of these tables. Now, what happened right about this part of my NDE, in my left ear, I heard, "My name is Alan. I'm your spirit guide." Well, I had no idea. I had never heard the term spirit guide. I don't think anybody had ever mentioned that before back in 1987. And what happened is he began to tell me in my ear everything I was seeing, everything I was experiencing, what this whole experience was about. And he told me that where I was in what's called the orientation center. And I want to give you kind of the backstory for your audience to understand this a little bit better. When we hear about a lot of people's near-death experiences, we hear about there was an accident of some kind, or they're having surgery like I was having, and they die, and they find themselves floating above their bodies, and they start going down this tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel, there's a white light. But before they get to it, they're met by somebody, either a loved one, a family friend, a sibling, someone who tells them it's not your time. You have to go back. So we've never known what's on the other side of that white light. But what they did with me, and I don't know how they did this, but my whole experience starts on the other side of that white light. When people go into the light, they end up in what is called the orientation center. So I'm standing there looking at this beautiful building, and I look over to my left, and this was the part that was extraordinary. It looked like out of solid marble were cut these doors, these gorgeous doors that when you looked at them, it was like looking into a tunnel, like looking into space. And there must have been thousands and thousands of these tunnels, about every 6 feet apart. And my guide said, look up at the next tunnel. So I look up, and there was a man who was coming through this tunnel. He was doing this. He had his right hand over his chest like he had pain. And my guide said he just died from a heart attack. And he was a man in his 80s or 90s. He was an elderly gentleman. He'd lived a long life on Earth, and he had just passed. Well, he had come down one of these tunnels and into the light. And remember I mentioned that there were 2 people sitting at every one of those tables? They're called orientation counselors on the other side. And my guide said to me that they help people remember where they're from. And the reason that they're there is that most of us, when we come into a lifetime, we don't remember anything about where we're from. So when people pass, many people are afraid to die because they don't remember that we're just going back home again when we pass. So these orientation counselors are there to help people remember where they're from. They tell them, you just finished your life on Earth. This is how you passed. You passed from a heart attack or a car accident, something where you passed, and now you're back on the other side. Well, here's what happened. The counselor that was in the table that was closest to that tunnel, she stood up, she walked over to him, she took her hands in his, and she sat him back down across from each other on the table at the table. And she started talking to him. But I was too far away to hear what she was saying. But my guide was telling me that she's an orientation counselor. She helps people remember where they're from when they get back to the other side. And my guide said to watch him. So I started watching as she was talking to him. And the most amazing thing happened. He began to change from a man in his 80s or 90s to a young man in his early 30s. And my guide said to me, we're all in our 30s on the other side. Well, as this whole thing was unfolding, I never knew that I died. During my whole experience, I didn't know that I had actually passed. I was just going along with this whole thing as he was talking to me so quickly, showing me all these different places that I never had time to say, okay, I'm supposed to be having surgery. What is going on here? What's happening? So I never knew that I died. So I would have asked him, why are we in our 30s? Does it have anything to do with Jesus, or why is that? But I don't know. And I think it's because when God created all of us, we're all in our 30s. That's how he created us. So I'm watching him, and as he changes into a young man again, he stands up and he walks off to the right between these columns down 3 steps. And he walked into what I call the gardens. I don't know if that's what the other side calls it, but that's what it looked like. These absolutely beautiful manicured gardens with perfect green grass and flowers and trees and plants. It was absolutely gorgeous. And there were all these people there. And my guide said, everybody has a reunion when they get back from Earth. So all the people that this gentleman had known in his lifetime, everybody was there. His parents, grandparents, friends, families, siblings, plus all the people that he knew on the other side were all there waiting for him. And people were applauding. They were hugging this man, telling him what a great job he did. And the reason that they were there is my guide explained to me that coming to Earth, it's a really tough place to be. I was told that of all the planets, this is one of the hardest ones of all. So when we come here, we have to be like warriors and fighters to get through all the things we have to go through while we're here. And he said it's a really big deal when you come to an Earth life because there are many, many of us who don't want to come here because it's so hard. And they don't. That's why it's such a big reunion when any of us finish a lifetime. And something else that I want to tell your listeners is that we don't remember how many people are rooting for us over there. We have no idea until we get back. There are so many people that are rooting for us, helping us to keep going forward, helping us to do our best, and wanting us to accomplish everything we set out to accomplish. Because none of our lives are accidents. And I'll tell you more about that in just a little bit. Do you have any questions for me so far?
Yeah, I have a lot of them, so I hope we can continue to string
Oh,
them
sure.
as you go.
Yeah, I'm in no hurry. I got plenty of time.
So you are witnessing, I guess, what it is you're witnessing people who look like they are humans still in the earth form, or do they look, even though they're transformed into what looks like 30, do they look like everyday people that you experience on earth?
Yeah, they look just like you and I. They look just like us. Some
Now,
people are taller, some people are shorter, some people have black hair, some people are blonde. It's totally up to how they want to appear. But I think God created all of us to have a specific look about us. Because everybody has their own personality, their own looks to them. Everybody is different. And everybody has, the only way I can describe it is that they have perfect bodies over there. They look just like us, but their bodies don't get sick. They don't age. They can't get hurt. It's like they are perfect versions of our bodies here. They just never get hurt or age.
did it look diverse, or did it look like community that you grew up in? Like, what was that like as far as like the people? Did it look like
It
all?
was everybody has their own personality. Everybody has their own look. There are people who you would say are Native Americans, Asians. I mean, it's just every nationality was there. Every single nationality, Black, Native American, Hindu. I mean, everybody was there.
Now, are people walking around like existing in what seems like Earth on heaven? Like, are there stores? Are there like people like playing a game, or at the movie theater? Is it like this big open space? How would you describe what the interactions were like?
Sure. That's a great question. Wherever my guide took me on the other side, and it was just a small part of the other side that he took me to. Wherever that was, it was really busy. There were people everywhere. And people seem to, they dress just like we do. A lot of people tend to wear gowns or robes of some kind, but other people wear jeans and a t-shirt. It's totally up to each individual soul. But a part of my experience, and I'll tell you about this in a little bit, but there was, in one of the buildings I was in, there was a window, this huge, gigantic window on my left-hand side. And when I looked out the window, I could see all these people going back and forth. And what it looked like was like, if you ever go to like a downtown city area at lunchtime and everybody's walking around, going to lunch, doing errands, that's what it looked like. There were all these people there, and they're busy. My guide told me that everything you like to do here on Earth, you can also do on the other side. So people are writing, or they're taking classes, going to lectures, going to music festivals, visiting with people. I didn't see, like, a lot of the things we see here on Earth. I didn't see any stores. I didn't see like restaurants. I didn't see anybody's individual homes. What I was in, what I would typically tend to call like a college campus area. There were all these buildings in one general area, and that's where it seemed like I was. Like, over here was your history building, here was your English building, over here was your science building. All these different places he took me to were in one general area. And a lot of them, they had beautiful architecture, like Greek architecture, beautiful Roman columns or Greek columns, those diamond-like kind of triangle roofs that they had, the white marble columns. That seemed to be a lot of the buildings that I saw over there were made of kind of that Greek marble kind of look to them.
And you mentioned that your guide says that it wasn't your time, and then you were able to kind of see someone who was it was their time. Did you get understanding on why you would come there if it wasn't your time? Like, what is that process, or is that an intentional experience that happens for people? Is that they come prematurely, or there's a word you were brought here by accident, but they kind of have some safeguard or practices for when.
Yeah, I think I know what you're thinking of. My guy didn't tell me anything about that, but I have heard people say that it's called an exit point. That when we come into a lifetime, we all have exit points that we can choose to leave. But ordinarily, we don't come back until we've actually finished our life. I don't know how that applies to things like accidents. I don't know if that's something that is planned for. I don't really know for sure, but I'll touch on that in just a little bit when I tell you about the different buildings that I went to and what they were for.
Okay, and then one more question just from what you shared so far. There's people who say they didn't want to come to the Earth Experience, and there were people who were there cheering them on. Or maybe you don't know, but did you get any understanding on one, if they didn't want to come, like why they had to come, and if it was planned out by any story? Did you get any understanding on that? And then also, did you get any understanding on people who are on Earth who decide to leave, like, take themselves out? Like, does that make any difference when they come to the other side?
Let me address the second part of that question first. I think you're thinking about suicides.
Hmm.
People that take their lives, nothing bad happens to them. The other side and God and their guides, nobody actually plans to take their life. It's not part of a life chart. We do plan how we're going to pass. Like the gentleman that I saw in the tunnel, the elderly man that had a heart attack. We do actually plan how we're going to pass. We also plan if we're going to leave as a child, or if we're going to leave someone in our 20s, or are we going to make it to we're in our 90s. All of that is actually planned for. When somebody takes their life, they go to the other side, and very often they put them in healing centers over there because their minds are just really confused, and they always think that if they can just take their life, that's going to stop everything. They're looking for answers so dramatically to end the pain that they feel, that they think that when they die that that's the end. But it's not. They wake up and they realize they're in the tunnel. Then they're on the other side. They're like, oh my gosh, I forgot. I forgot this is home. Because they don't want us to, they want us to finish our lives and do our best, because we all come here for specific reasons. There are probably as many reasons to come to a place like Earth as there are people on this planet. 8 billion different reasons. But nothing happens to suicides. They heal them, they love them, they counsel them, And what happens to them is once they're made okay, they're okay after that lifetime, they start to feel like they want to try it again because they feel they kind of have regret that they didn't stick it out, they didn't finish, and they want to come back again. But nobody makes them. Nobody makes any of us actually come into a lifetime. It's totally up to the individual soul. And people ask me, well, why would anybody leave a place like the other side that is beautiful and perfect and loving and happy to come to a place like Earth? Why would anybody want to do that? It was explained to me that on the other side, there is no negativity. There are no wars. There's no disease. There's no hunger. There's no poverty. There's no homelessness. None of those things exist there. And the reason we come to a place like Earth is because this is where you have experiential learning. And we learn the most by going through negative events. And the reason that's such a big deal is because when God created us, He gave all of us the wanting to always learn, to grow, and develop, and to keep becoming all of our potential. And we come to a place like Earth because here there is conflict. There are problems we have to deal with every single day, circumstances we have to deal with, all these different things that are tough to get through. And I always say that many of us all have a Mount Everest moment in our lifetimes, sometimes more than just one, where you think, I can't get over this mountain in my life. It's too hard. But when we get over it, that's when we realize that that event we survived has made us who we are today. We're stronger. We have accomplished more than we ever thought we could, and we continue to develop. And it's almost like trying to describe to somebody what it's like to ride a bike for the first time. You can tell somebody what it's like, but they never know until they do it themselves. And they ride that bike and they're like, oh yeah, now I've learned. Now I get it. And that's one of the reasons that we come here, to learn and to help other people. But it's also for us to learn and to grow. And it's to grow in the kind of ways that we can't on the other side. Does that make sense?
A little. So I guess if we aren't opting in to come here and then we go through these negative experiences, I'm one of those people that I'm still trying to put the understanding together, because
Sure.
if I piece it together, before you come here, is there any decision making, or is it like you're just sit here? I know you said that we understand, like we get to get reminded of why we come here, but just because you mentioned those people who didn't want to come, were they like forced into coming here?
No, not at all. It's totally up to each individual. What happens is before we come into an Earth life, we go to, there's a building over there. I don't know what they call it, but it's this huge, gigantic, round building with a big dome on top. And it's got all these marble columns all in a circle around this building. It's huge. It's huge. That's where we go when we plan a lifetime. And I don't know why we go there, but my guide said this is where all of us go when we plan a life. Because a lifetime it's not an accident. None of us are accidents. We actually go to this big building and we write out the things we want to accomplish. Have you ever seen like Egyptian papyrus paper? It's kind of it's a scroll. It's kind of it's like a parchment, but it looks like it's really old. And we all have these scrolls over there. And my guide took me to this building and he walked me up to a table. And on this table, there was one single scroll that was rolled up and it had a blue ribbon around it. And my guide explained to me that none of our lives are accidents. Everything that we want to accomplish, we actually chart, we write out ahead of time. And it's the best way that I can describe it is like what a lot of us do this time of year. We have New Year's resolutions. We go back, we look at what did we write down for last year? Did we meet some of those goals? And then we write out new goals for the next year. That's kind of what it's like when we have a lifetime. For example, we plan out what country we're going to live in, who our parents are going to be. Are we going to go to a university? What kind of careers are we going to have? Are we going to get married? Are we going to have children? All these major events go into planning a lifetime. And we also plan the experiences that we want to have that help us learn what we want to learn. Because nobody is an accident. Nobody comes here just as an accident or a thought. Lifetimes are all planned ahead of time. Now, that's not to say that every single detail is planned out. The fact that you're going to go to have Mexican food on Sunday, that wasn't planned ahead of time. That's just something we do while we're here. But the major events of our lifetimes, those are charted ahead of time. And what happens is when we finish our lifetime, we go back to the other side, we go back to that big building with the big dome on top, and we get our scroll. We take it out, we look at it, and we see, did we accomplish everything we wanted to accomplish? And what was really amazing is when I was in that building, the one with the big dome on it, I looked over to my right, and there was this huge, long, sprawling wall that was full of scrolls. And everybody back when I had my experience back in 1987, everybody who was on Earth had one of these scrolls on this wall. And before I got there, my guide took my scroll down and put it on this table so that I could tell people we really do plan our lifetimes. They're not accidents. And that when we finish our lifetime and go back home again, we look at these scrolls and we see, did we accomplish what we set out to accomplish? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so, and I'm not sure how everyone's story ends up, but there are
Mhm.
cases where people are over here on Earth and we have the negative experiences. It almost feels like if everyone is meant to be here, that sounds positive. Are any people coming over here intentionally with the negative experience in place for their scroll? Like they came over here to be like an evil person or to hurt or harm people? Like, did you get any understanding on like why that would be the case for people who come over here?
Here's what I can tell you. My guide didn't specifically tell me anything about that, but there is evil. It does exist. All we have to do is look at the news on any given day, and we can hear about some of the horrible things that happen here on this planet. And the only thing that I know is that when God created all of us, He gave us all free will, and He wants us to choose the path of the light, the goodness. But there are some who, and I don't understand why, but there are some who choose a darker path. It's almost like Star Wars. You got the Force, you got the light, the dark. And I don't know why some people choose that. But when I was having my near death experience, I knew that God, our creator, our father, never created a hell that I was raised to believe because I was Catholic. I thought if you don't live a good life, you're going to be sent to hell when you die. Well, when I was over there, remember I talked about earlier that you can feel God? You can feel how much He loves you, how much He cherishes you, and that God could never throw away any of His children any more than any of us could throw away our own children. We couldn't even imagine that. We give our children as many opportunities as they need to learn and to grow. And that's what God does also. Something that happened remember the part of my story where everyone was meeting that man when he came through in the reunion?
Mhm.
Right after that, my guide took me to this beautiful, gorgeous marble building that had white marble columns all along the perimeter. He took me to the inside of this building and we went into a room. And the room he took me to was a round room. It looked like a round theater, but there were no seats there. It was just a round room. And above my head were all of these movie screens, all in a big circle. There must have been maybe 15 or 20 of these movie screens. And my guide said, "This is the life review." And all of a sudden, every one of these screens lit up and they were playing like a movie, but it was about my life. It was all episodes of my lifetime. And the thing that's so interesting is that the life review tells you how your lifetime affected other people. And there was a child or another student in my elementary school class, and I still remember this. His name was Toby, and he had something wrong with his legs. He either had MS or Parkinson's, something where he couldn't walk without crutches. So one day we're out at recess and he fell, and I ran up to him. I helped him stand up and I put his crutches back on. And I never thought anything about that. That's what anybody would do. Well, I could feel in that life review what he felt when I helped him and how much he appreciated that. Well, on the other end, if we intentionally hurt people, in our lifetime, we have to feel how our actions affected them. And it was explained to me that that is the greatest teacher of the soul. That's how we learn. So if a soul isn't developed, because development is strictly up to each one of us, nobody forces us to want to learn and to grow. And so the souls that haven't learned, those are the ones that tend to hurt other people. And it was explained to me that nobody gets to avoid the life review. Everybody has to have one. And it's not to condemn anybody or to judge anybody. It's for you to learn. And that's the greatest teacher, is that life review. And that was something that happened right after I saw all those people in the reunion. So I think when all of us pass, when we finish this lifetime, I think our guides take us to do a life review pretty soon once we get back. But I don't know how all the mechanics of that actually comes into play.
And one more question before we continue the narrative of the NDE.
Sure.
You said that you could feel God. Could you see God?
You know what? I couldn't. But I can tell you something. Do you want me to tell you this now, or should I wait till the end?
Whichever feels appropriate. Maybe now.
Oh, okay. At the end of my experience, my guide had taken me to all these different places and told me what these buildings were for, and all of this was going on. The last part of my near-death experience was he took me to the most beautiful meadow I have ever seen. I've never seen anything like it here on Earth, ever. Beautiful rolling green hills, wildflowers, plants and flowers. It was just gorgeous. It was a perfect day, not a cloud in the sky. And then he left. And I thought I was standing in this meadow by myself. So I turned around to look at the rest of the meadow, and there was a man standing right in front of me, about 3 feet away. And he didn't tell me who he was, but I knew this was the entity we know as Jesus. He didn't tell me that. I just knew. I said, "Oh my gosh, this is Jesus." And I could see him. He was wearing a white robe. He had this white gown on with a golden sash around his waist. And he had gold-colored sandals that laced up his calves. Well, when I went to look at him, there was so much light that was coming out of him that I couldn't see his face. And he was different than everybody else I saw. Everybody else looks just like you and I. Everyone has their own look about them. Well, there was so much energy that I couldn't see him. And that's when he spoke to me. And he said, "You must tell them there is no death." And right after he said that, it was like, boom, I woke right back up inside that operating room. And all I can think of is that the entity we know as Jesus that I saw in my experience, I think is the part of God that interacts with all of us. And that's hard for me to believe, because why would God talk to someone like me? I don't have like you. I don't have a podcast. I'm not a radio personality. I don't have a book. I don't have anything. Why would they talk to me? But it was the way that he said it. He didn't say, you know what, John, when it's convenient for you, when you have time, when you're not busy, would you mind sharing everything we showed you? It wasn't like that. It was like, you must tell them there is no death. Because when I got back from having that NDE, I went through a horrible, horrible depression. It was the darkest time of my life, because I didn't want to be here. I wanted to go back there, and I wanted to go back and stay there. I don't want to be here. How am I supposed to live here knowing what it's like over there? And the only thing that helped me was when I realized that they said, you must tell them there is no death. It was kind of like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. This is what you're supposed to tell people. Tell them, because everybody's afraid of dying. You've got to tell them. And so that's what I've done all these years later, is just try to share my story, to try to bring people that peace.
Was your near-death experience a part of the plan?
I don't know. I've thought about that so many times. I don't know. But what I can't figure out is I never had surgery before. I didn't know that I had allergic reaction to anesthesia. And I don't know how my guide would have known that, because it was almost like, it kind of felt, when I look back on this experience, it felt like they knew I was coming for this experience, because it was like everything was planned. And I don't know how they could have known that. The other thing too, that I thought was so interesting, remember when I talked about being inside that orientation center? That's where people come down the tunnels when they finish their life. Every one of those tables that these counselors were sitting at, none of them had computers on them. There were no computers. There were no notebooks. There was nothing about who was coming, who was going to pass. But all those counselors knew who was coming through and when they were coming through. And I don't know how they know that. And even all the people that were there to greet this gentleman that came through, somebody had to tell them, because they're not just standing around all day. Everybody's busy doing stuff. So somebody had to tell them, hey, John Smith is coming through. Let's go wait for him in the reunion area. Somebody had to tell them. And it's all I can think of is that it's a God thing, because there's no other, how else would they know? There are billions of other people there, and people are doing all kinds of activities. They're not just standing around waiting for us to come back. They're all busy. So I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
Have you ever seen the movie Eternity?
I don't remember that name though.
I don't know if you know Elizabeth Olsen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've heard of her.
Yes, she was in this movie Eternity that came out this year. I watched it, and everything that you're saying is reminding me of the movie so far. And it's so, and
I'll have to see it.
People have, like, these experiences all over, and they are coming back to kind of help each other. If life is about helping each other with whatever we get. But what's interesting is the guides. Do they seem like they're different than people who experience Earth? And the reason I have this question is because you said it was a choice. It seems like some people don't ever come to Earth. Is the mind correctly?
Yeah, that's true.
What do you know about the guys? Like, what are they, something special or different, or that's just an experience they choose while they're on this side?
The only thing that I got from that was that our guides know us almost even better than we know ourselves. they're the ones that actually help us plan each lifetime. And I think that all of us have the potential to become spirit guides because they helped us, or they would help us write out the things we wanted to accomplish, and they would help us to have the experiences that we would need to have to learn what we wanted to learn. Because there are so many reasons why people come here. Some people come here to have children, like you did and I did. Other people come here to focus on a career, like I just want to learn medicine. That's how I'm going to spend my life. Or you've got someone who comes in like Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King Jr., who come here to have a huge impact on society and history. Or you've got someone like Mother Teresa who comes in. There are all these different reasons people come here. And there are many who don't want to come here. They go elsewhere. And something too, Danny, that was just amazing to me is, are you an astronomy fan or science fiction fan?
I would be a fan if I knew more about it, but
Yeah.
I'm not into it as much.
Well, listen to this. Then this will turn you into a fan. So on the other side, after he takes me to the life review building, we go to this past life building where you can look at past lifetimes. He took me to this beautiful, gorgeous, steel looking building that looked like a stadium that we would have football or soccer games to watch. So we go on the inside of this building and all the lights are on. This place was really bright. And there were all these seats. There must have been thousands of seats in this building. And my guide said, "This is a planetarium." Well, when I was a kid, we would take field trips to the planetarium, so I knew what they were. You could see stars and they would show pictures of planets on the ceiling. So we walk in and there's a gentleman behind me, and I never turned around to look at him. I don't know why, I never did. But he was a guy that knew everything about astronomy. And what he'd like to do on the other side is tell people about astronomy, galaxies, planets, stars, suns. That's what he loved to do. Because on the other side, everybody seems to have their work, what they love to do, but it's not because they have to do it to make a living like we do here. They work in the things that God gifted all of us for. All of us have gifts from God. And on the other side, we tend to do and work in the gifts that we love, whether it's counseling or you like math or you're into geography or you like writing, all these different things God has given us as gifts. So everybody on the other side works in their gifts pretty much. Well, the guy that was behind me, he ran this planetarium. So as I'm standing there, he said, "Let's begin." So all the lights go off. It's pitch black. So I sit down in this chair and he says to me, everything, or he said, when you look at the stars, this is what you see. And what he was talking about was all the people on Earth in 1987. This is what they see when they look at the stars. And our sun showed up, then Earth, then Mercury, Venus, Mars, Neptune, all of our planets showed up on the ceiling. And then they disappeared. And then he said, when we look at the stars, this is what we see. And all of a sudden, planet after planet after planet started showing up. First, there were dozens, then hundreds, then thousands, and then millions and millions of other planets. And he said, there's far more life in the universe than you can possibly imagine. And my guide said that there were two reasons why they took me here to this planetarium. They wanted me to tell people that Earth is not the only inhabited planet. And secondly, Earth is not the only planet that we can have lifetimes on. And that just blew my mind because I grew up watching Captain Kirk in Star Trek. I always believed that there had to be other civilizations out there. And here's the thing I tell people. I'm kind of an amateur astronomer. I love to learn about astronomy. And because I wanted to understand how many planets are there really? How many are there? Well, if you look at the Milky Way galaxy, the galaxy which is our home, where we are, astronomers estimate that there are 100 billion planets in the Milky Way galaxy. And they estimate that there are 400 billion stars, just like our sun. Well, they believe now that they have research from the Hubble telescope and the James Webb Space Telescope, they believe that there are 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. If every single galaxy has 100 billion planets, that means the number of other worlds are absolutely unlimited. And we can have lifetimes on any of those other worlds. That's why so many people choose to go elsewhere when they want to learn something, and they don't come to Earth. It's almost like the toughest warriors are the ones that come to Earth because it's such a hard place to be. And I have always just loved astronomy, and that was my favorite part of my NDE was learning about that in the planetarium with all the galaxies. That was my favorite part.
You mentioned that we all had gifts. Did you learn what your gift was, or do you know your gift?
You know, I don't. I have wondered about that a lot, but I really don't know what it is. I don't know.
And going back to the time that you came back at your NDE, I know we probably have to go back to some other experiences, but you came back here, you were depressed, and you heard the sound, you have to let them know about death. I may be messing it up a little bit, but
All right.
how long did that last, that depression? And besides having that in your head, do you feel like you absolutely snap back into like this experience with a positive mindset? Does it feel still hard and negative to you with this new experience? What is life like now that you had that depression, heard that sound?
Yeah, back then when it happened, I literally laid in bed for 2 months. I stopped eating. I mean, I didn't even shower. I was so depressed for 2 months because I just didn't understand, how am I supposed to live here? How is anybody supposed to live here knowing what it's like over there? And the only thing that helped me was I began to think about what I was told. You must tell them there is no death. And it took me a period of 2 months to realize that, all right, John, they gave you an assignment. You're supposed to tell people how much hope you have now, the knowledge, the understanding to help people who have lost loved ones, spouses or children. You have to let them know that nobody really dies. And when I realized that my story can help other people, that's what brought me out of it. And the greatest privilege of my life has been people contacting me. They'll email me or they'll go to my website and get a hold of me that way. And they just want to know, am I a real guy? Did I really have this experience? I'm not just some AI creation. And I can tell them, absolutely, I'm a real person. What I had happen was real. And I can promise you that when you die, nothing's going to happen. You're going to go back to the other side. In fact, what I'd like to tell people is the happiest day of your lifetime is going to be your last day, because that's the day you get to go home. And all the people that left before you, your parents, friends, family members, even our pets, are all going to be there when it's our time to go. We just have to get through it day by day, keep fighting, keep doing our best, and soldiering through this lifetime. And when it comes to an end, all the pain you went through, all the sorrow, all the disappointment, all the hard times, all of that makes you who you are. and it makes you the kind of person you've always wanted to be. And even if you look at who you were 10 years ago, nobody would want to go back to who they used to be. You want to continue to grow, to continue to develop, and continue to improve. And that's what lifetimes do for us. They help make us better. But I want people to know too that we don't always constantly come into a lifetime, because this earth isn't home. This is not where we're from. We're from the other side. We're from the place that you were before you showed up here. That's our real home. And we just come into lifetimes periodically. Sometimes people choose to come in for more lifetimes. Other people have fewer lifetimes. It's just strictly up to the individual soul, what they want to do.
Does Earth have to be hard? Like, is that written in stone that the Earth?
No.
Okay.
I guess what I could say is that nobody is going to come out of life unscathed on this planet. That's why everybody's here. Not that people are masochists and want to experience pain, but going through tough times is how we learn. And nobody comes here because they want to have a perfect life. If they did, they would just stay on the other side. Just stay there. There's no reason to come here, because things happen. There are accidents, there are layoffs, there are divorces, there are deaths. Things happen here that everybody has to go through. And it's how we learn. It's really how we develop and how we grow, by going through tough times. But it doesn't have to be brutally hard for an entire lifetime. It's just up to what each individual person wants to experience.
And so after experiencing Earth, do you have an understanding on how that actually helps people on the other side in a perfect world? Like, I imagine you put out your plan, you come to Earth. Maybe you said, I want to be a baby that was brutally, hurt. I'm come back 2 years,
Yeah.
and I come back. I don't know if that 2-year-old baby becomes 30 or not, but like they come back to this perfect life. What would be the purpose or understanding? Is it just so that they can experience it, or is it, and the perfect life, now they have more depth to them as a human because of that growth? I'm wondering what, maybe like going through the entire experience of like, okay, I came to Earth, now I'm back. Now what happens to them?
Yeah.
On or find somewhere else to do to, make up this eternal life?
Yeah. The best way that I can describe it is, because God gave us kind of like spiritual DNA to always want to continue to develop, to see what our potential is, to see what we can become. That's what we become when we get back to the other side. All the things that you went through in a lifetime, all the experiences, the heartaches, the pains, that makes us better. And it's on the other side. This is kind of hard to explain. Here on Earth, we're raised to believe that success is based on how much money you have, how much status you have, how much do you have in your 401k, how big is your house. We're kind of raised to think that that is what success is. But it's backward, because on the other side, none of that is important. That doesn't matter. What matters over there is, who did you become from that lifetime? It's like a whole different mindset over there. What's valuable to them is the experiences you had here, the tough experiences, because it's the tough things that make you who you are. If you never had anything challenging to go through, you would never learn anything, because the best way that we learn is when we have to go through something that challenges us. And that's why on the other side, let me tell you something before I forget. Remember how we talked about learning is such a big thing over there? There are different ways that we can learn on the other side. But we come here to Earth, a place like this, to experience that actual learning, to feel it, to live it. On the other side, one of the places my guide took me to was this unbelievably gigantic library. It was so long, I couldn't see the end of it. That's how long it was. And he told me, anything you've ever wanted to learn is in that library. So we go on the inside. And it's huge, tall, wooden bookshelves, just lined with books everywhere you could see. There were people in there. Some people were reading, some people were visiting, other people were looking at books on the bookshelves. There was just a lot of people everywhere. So he takes me over to the left-hand side of this library. And on the left-hand side were all these study rooms, just like what we would think of a study room here today in our library, modern libraries. They're about the size of somebody's living room, maybe, or a kitchen. So we walk up there. He takes me to this room where there's a woman who was sitting there with jet black hair all the way down to her waist. She was wearing kind of a purple tunic or purple gown of some kind. And her back was to me. She was sitting on a couch. And she was watching what we would call today is a flat screen TV, probably 50 or 60-inch screen. It was this big movie screen. Well, back in 1987, we didn't have flat screen TVs yet. We had those huge, big, bulky television sets that weighed like hundreds of pounds. You couldn't mount these on a wall. So I was amazed to see this flat screen TV. Well, she was watching it, and my guide said, get closer to see what she's watching. So I get closer, and I can see that she's watching a battle between Native American Indians on horseback and the United States cavalry on horseback. It's a battle. And I thought she's watching a movie. Obviously, she's just watching a movie. And my guide said, she's watching real history. And I said to myself, that's impossible. We didn't have video cameras 250 years ago. There's no way this could be, how could anybody record that? And my guide said, everything gets recorded in our lifetimes. And it's a God thing, because I have no explanation as to how that's possible. But it is, because we all have a life review and we all see all the episodes of our lifetimes. So on the other side, if you think, you say, Danny, I want to go learn about Native American battles that happened on Earth back in the 1800s. You could go to this library. You could go watch this on these screens. You could watch history and actually see what really happened. And I have always been interested in history, and I can't wait to get back because there's so many things I want to learn about. And that's one of the things that we can do is we can watch history while we're over there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like the concept of that, strictly because it makes me understand people a little bit more on Earth that seemingly know things. Like, I wonder if there's just some things that they know because this is like their second or third time around, and that's their knowing. Because I'm always trying to go back to some source. Like, how do you know that is true? Everyone says read a book or do your research, but every book or thing that you can research can take you into so many different directions. So, like, how do you absolutely know that these things happen without it just being, and the key word that's been in a lot of my talks lately has been knowing. Like, there's this knowing, and I wonder if the knowing comes from that. You also mentioned this idea of finding out who you can become when you're here on Earth or challenging yourself. Um, and in the back of my head, it made me think of like this story that we hear on Earth about like a fallen angel, and this angel becoming like a Satan or a devil, I guess to kind of challenge to see how great they could be, to see if they could match God. I'm not sure if that resonates with you any of like, one, do you believe that that is a true story? Or do you feel like that could be a case that someone actually might choose coming over here is to be like this Satan that tries to be better than the God that you.
That is a great question. And that is something that I get asked all the time. And my guide didn't even mention it to me. So I have no idea. I know that the Bible mentions the fallen angel, Lucifer or Satan, that he was kicked out of the Garden of Eden because he wanted to be like God. I don't know if that's true. I do know that there are souls who've chosen that evil, dark path. And I don't know if there is one all encompassing devil, because nothing is stronger than God. And that's something that I've always wondered. Why would somebody choose a dark path if they can never win? They'll never win. And even in life, there are battles that the darkness wins, but they never win the war. They never win the war. And it's almost like here on Earth, we're in that battle. It's a battle to be here, to see all the things that happen, the murders, the sex trafficking, the wars, everything that happens here. It's really a battleground. And I tend to think that Earth is the place where those forces like to be. Because this planet hasn't been won yet for God. There are still so many battles that are happening here. And I just don't know if there is one overall being that is responsible for all of it. I don't know. All I know is that if there is a being like that, they can never become God, because God created them. And he gave all of us free will. He wants all of us to love him, to follow the path of goodness, of kindness, of love, just like Jesus did, and all the leaders that have come after him. But he doesn't make us do anything. That's part of the free will. And people can choose what path they want to follow. And I just don't understand why, knowing the other side, as beautiful as it is, why would anybody want to choose a path of evil? I don't get that. I don't understand.
I'm thinking of that too as I listen to what happens when they do come back, the moments you said that they experience, how they impacted other people. Actually, let's scoot back a little bit, because at the beginning you say you was in a Catholic faith, and I think you landed with the word like life is spiritual. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
But when you bring in Jesus, and not making us do anything, because I've been doing a lot of studying of my faith, and I'm starting to think after this conversation I have an idea, because one of the things I feel like I can do is to have heaven on earth. So I think being able to experience that is probably what I thought I could, try to do here. In the back of my head, is like the only reason I would come here is like because I really, really want to see like what's truly joy, what's truly love, like here, like experience it every day. Like and I want people to believe in that. Like it actually can be. Like even when you said like a lot of people think it's depressing to be here. A lot of people feel like it's hard, and those are the key words that I hear. I'm like, well, why do I feel like it can be accomplished? Right. So that's what I'm thinking about as I listen to you. And I also think about me coming over here, just studying this, right? Studying your stories and studying people's belief systems. That's what I'm doing. Like, that's the only thing that kind of gives me a life force, is to have these conversations. So thank you. But I say all that to say, one of the things that stood out when you just mentioned Jesus and forcing is that Christianity, and it could be just the way that religion is foreign over here. That's one of the things that it seems like you have to be forced to believe that Jesus Christ is your savior and died for your sins in order to experience goodness on the other side. One, did you get any understanding, or do you have any opinion about that relationship with Jesus, but just the idea that you have to believe in Jesus as your savior?
No, you don't have to at all. In fact, that's a really good question, because when I was standing there right in front of Jesus, I could feel how much love he has for us, how much compassion and how much understanding, because he knows what it's like to have an earth life. He knows there can be times where it's really challenging. And the feeling that I got from him was that they don't care what religion you follow, as long as whichever one you follow brings you closer to God. There is, when I was there wasn't like, here, your Catholics are over here, your Buddhists are over there, your Hindus are here. It wasn't like there was any religion there. There may have been, but it was more like a spirituality, an understanding of we love everybody, we have compassion for everybody, we understand. It's kind of like that one commandment that Jesus was asked in the Bible. He said, "What is the greatest commandment?" And he said, "To love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and do unto others what you would have them do unto you." That to me is the essence of Christianity. And that's what it's like on the other side. There wasn't really, like, nobody would say, "I'm a Buddhist," or "I'm a Catholic." It didn't seem like that was a big deal over there. And I got the sense from Jesus that it's just really about love, about compassion, about helping your fellow man get through this life. And when you finish your life, you go back to the other side and pick up where you left off. So that's a great question.
When you talk through the feeling of love, or just in your note now about to love, is there a difference in how you experience love in this earth after your experience and the love that you had during that experience, your NDE or
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the lives?
uh, absolutely.
And
It's
how do you describe love?
yeah, it's an extraordinary feeling on the other side, but you can still have that kind of love here. It's almost like the best Christmas you've ever had with family, or any event or experience you've had when you've been absolutely happy with family and friends, the happiest time of your life. If you can multiply that by 1,000, that's what it feels like on the other side all the time. It feels like that. And we can absolutely feel love. It's the same thing you feel about your own kids. Like when you put your kids down to bed at night and you take them to sporting events, you love to see them engaged in different things, and you have this incredible love for your children. That's the same way that it feels all the time on the other side. It's that just amazing feeling of love that exudes everywhere. It's everywhere over there.
Do people have relationships? Are people like with one partner, or what's that experience like as far as like romantic love? Is there a such thing as romantic love?
Yeah, there is actually. There is in remember that big building with the big dome on top I told you about? Before we left that building, he took me to a place inside there that was like a library, this gigantic library, but all the books were the same. They looked like Encyclopedia Britannicas. They were kind of purple, kind of maroon color, and they were all in this gigantic room. And he walked me up to a book, and every one of these books had gold lettering on them, but the lettering didn't go horizontal. The lettering went vertical, went up and down. So he takes me up to one and he shows me the name of the book, and it was named Nina, Nina. And he explained to me that Nina is my soulmate. And I had never heard that term before. Nobody had ever coined that term back in 1987. I had no idea what he was even talking about. But he told me that when God created us, he created all of us with a perfect mate. That person is there for us on the other side. It's who you are most compatible with on the other side. And I don't know if the soulmate comes into our lifetimes with us. That I don't know, because one of the reasons that we're here is to learn and to grow. And one of the ways we do that is through relationships. So I think if we always had our soulmate with us in every lifetime, we probably wouldn't learn that much. And I think it's possible to love many different people in your life. Um, but I do know that the soulmate is real, and we all have one. We all have a soulmate. In that book, it has everything about that soul, all their lifetimes, what they've learned, what their gifts are, All these things are in that person's book, and we all have one of those books. We're all someone's soulmate. That's a great question.
So now how do you explain this? Because you're married, right?
Yeah, yep.
So would this be true that your partner now is more like a life partner teaching you something and not necessarily someone's that's like, because I guess because the word that's soulmate is how it's been coined. It's like, this is the love of my life. And this, like,
Yeah, yeah.
where would you take that? I'm just interested in where you would.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. My wife and I have talked about that a lot. If we are each other's soulmates, we really don't know. We just don't know. And she's the one that told me that she knows that it's possible to have different. We just love different people. We can love people all through our lifetimes, but that one special one really is the soulmate. And that's not to say that the soulmate can't come into a lifetime with us. They absolutely can. I just don't know how often that they actually do that. And that's something that I get asked a lot, and I just don't know. And I do know that when people when they finish their lifetime here on Earth, a lot of people feel like failures if they didn't get married, if they didn't have children, if they didn't find the perfect person. And I tell them, it doesn't matter, because that may not be why you came here. You may not have chosen to get married or to have children. You focused on something else, because everybody has a different life plan. So it might just be that you weren't supposed to have that in this life.
I think that's one of my favorite things from today because that's one of the when you listen, I don't know if you are into like social media as much, but a lot of people kind of, are talking about like I just want to be single or I don't want to have children or all these things like that that makes sense for them, but it's almost like they want to paste it on to everyone else's experience. And I
Yeah.
think it's honest. Like it's honest that you say that I don't know. I think that's the most honest thing that we can do is like I don't know. And
Yeah.
when people say I don't know, it allows me to trust the things that they do say because they're honest and not making up stories where
Yeah.
where they can't really put something to. Um, but to that note, I would stress for anyone to kind of see each other in that way, like their life paths are just different. Doesn't mean it has to be the same as yours. But also it's just so interesting to have these so-called entities come in. The way it sounds is like kind of like good and evil, like, light and dark. Like Earth seems like dark, and then the other side is like it's light and it's good, the perfect world where it seems like we're all trying to get back to, but also trying to answer this question of why would anybody come here? And I love what you said earlier, because I think you said, I'm gonna mess up the number, but it was a huge number, maybe 8 billion of reasons
Yeah.
someone could come to Earth. And I just want to pause here because I thought it would be a good chance for us to play a game. I didn't think we could get a game into this experience, but I want to see if you can do a little bit of improv with me because I'm interested in these 8 billions. And if they could come to your heart, if you had 1 minute on the clock, just 1 minute on the clock, can you go through reasons for anybody kind of like stuck? Maybe something will resonate with them of that you've come across the understanding of reasons why people come to Earth.
Oh, there are so many. Some people come here because they want to experience children. Because on the other side, there are no children unless they want to appear that way. Because we're all, when God created us, He created all of us to be in our 30s. So when children, if they come into a lifetime for a short life for whatever reason, when they pass, they don't stay as children. They age up. Just like that gentleman that I saw come through that orientation, he came to the tunnel. He was an elderly gentleman. He aged down to his soul. And when children pass, they just age up to be in the 30s. So a lot of people come in to experience what it's like to have children. Other people come here to experience a loss. Like they want to know what it's like to experience the loss of a child, which to me, I don't think I'm that strong because I think that would be too hard. But there are people that do, that come in, they want to know what that feels like. There are other people that come into life because they want to know what it's like to come from very poor neighborhoods or very little in terms of material things to turn their life around and become what we would call a success here on this planet. There's a lot of people that like to do that. There are some people that come in because they want to work in a certain profession. Like if you want to be a doctor, or you want to be a nurse or a police officer, people come in just because they want to experience what that's like. And my guide told me, because people have always asked me, well, what does everybody do on the other side? What do they do there? And my guide said, people do the same thing they do here. They can play sports. They can go to music events. They can, one thing that I know we don't have to do is we don't have to sleep. And I don't know why that is, but we don't have to sleep. But there are all kinds of reasons, so many different reasons why people come here. I think there are probably as many reasons as there are people on this planet. And some people come in for a very short time, and other people come in like that gentleman that I saw. They come in to live a long life. It's totally up to each individual person.
I know that we jumped to maybe the end. Are there any other parts of your story that do you remember where you want to pick up? I know I took you on a whole.
That's okay.
Right.
No, I think I covered everything pretty much. Talked about soulmates. Talked about there is one thing I could tell you. Before my guide took me to that meadow where I saw Jesus, he took me to a castle, and a castle just like you would see in England or France, this beautiful stone castle. And he took me to this castle because he wanted me to know that on the other side, you can learn about different periods of Earth's history. So he takes me to the inside of this castle, beautiful red carpet all along the floor. When you walked in, it made you feel like you were royalty. And on both sides of this castle, on the walls, were life-size paintings. And what they were paintings of everybody who was royalty during that period of Earth's history. You could see the life-size paintings, what they looked like. You could see what they were wearing. And in front of every one of these pictures, there was a podium. And on top of the podium, there was a book. And every one of these paintings had a corresponding podium with a book on it. And my guide said, this book is about that person's lifetime. So on the other side, if you're over there, you wanted to learn about medieval Europe on Earth, you could go to this castle. You could see what they lived in. You could see what they wore by the pictures, what they looked like. And you could also read about their lifetime in this book. Well, right about then, I looked over to my right, and this castle had a round stairwell, and there was a woman walking down this stairwell. She had strawberry blonde hair, and she was wearing like a peach-colored outfit, kind of like what you're wearing on your head. It was kind of like that color. Well, she walked up to me, and I didn't know what to do. So she walked up to me, and she said, "Is there anything I can help you find?" And I said the stupidest thing to her. I said, "No thanks, I'm just looking." I didn't know what else to say. I could have asked her, "Who are you? Where am I? I thought I was supposed to be having surgery. What is going on?" But I said, "No thanks, I'm just looking." I wish I would have asked her something. But my guide told me that on the other side, what she loves to do is study history. She knew everything about medieval Europe during that time period here on Earth. So if you're over there and you want to learn, you could come talk to her. And she was like what we would call a professor on the other side, what we would call a professor here on Earth. She was like a professor of medieval European history. Wow. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, because we're going back in history and people are studying history. And I imagine like life continues to go on. Is it that Earth kind of has the same thing going on over and over again? And this is kind of like a fake experience? Or would you name this fake and the other side real? I'm just curious if you have any ideas because it kind of seems like if nothing really matters, whether whether someone believes in a religion or even if they decide to take themselves out and they come to the other side, they just kind of go to a healing session, or if they are a person who decides evil on the side, it doesn't seem like they get any hell or repercussions besides that feeling. So is this like a fake like experience, or would you say that it's real? This Earth?
Well, here's what I can tell you. What on the other side, I have never felt anything that felt so real.
Mm.
It was like that's the real world. That's where we're from. That's our home. And being here on Earth, Earth is real also, but it's like in second position. It's kind of like this is real still for all of us that are here. It's just not the real world. It's not where we spend eternity. Eternity is not here on Earth. Each lifetime that we live, it's kind of like being in a part time job. We're here part time, and we're only here for 80, 90, 100 years, and then we go back home again. So the other side, I know it's hard to grasp it, but that's our home. That's the true home. And when you come here, being here on Earth is almost like the shadow world. It's not the real world. It's not eternity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And we talked about books a lot. So I have
Yeah.
this book that's made up. I get people's feedback in whatever direction they want. But the book is called The Making of a Human. And the primary question you're trying to ask is what makes a human? But you don't have to just have the exact answer. It could be, what title should be in the book, what picture should be in the book, what story of your own would you add to the book, or inspiration or quote. If you were to answer what makes a human and contribute to the book, what do you think needs to be in a book, or what story or insight would you share and will want that in a book?
I think if I could add something, it would be the extraordinary courage of humanity, the extraordinary courage that people have when they come here, especially the kind of courage it takes to be someone like Martin Luther King Jr., to be someone like Nelson Mandela, to be someone like Jimmy Valvano, who passed from cancer. I think the things that people go through here, everything that they survive, just the absolute courage that people have to come into a life here, how brave people are, how courageous they are to come here to fight and to work hard and to become the kind of person that they've always wanted to be. I admire that because it is a hard place to be. It's not easy here. And we all have to be warriors. We all have to be tough to come to this lifetime, to this planet. So I think that's what I would add.
What would you say to anyone who feels like they don't have a purpose here, or they hate it here, or they can't find any reasons or gifts to want to stay here? Is there anything that you would share on those lines? Like, is it okay to be, just wake up each day, go to work, and go to sleep? That's the narrative right now. I didn't come here to just pay bills and die. Is there anything to that? Like, is it okay if someone just wanted to experience paying bills and dying? Do you feel like that's something that someone would choose? Does it all have to be extraordinary?
No, in fact, most people's lives aren't extraordinary. Most of us just live ordinary lives. Get up in the morning, go to work, take care of your kids, come home, make dinner, pay bills, take them to sporting events, and do the whole thing over again. That's kind of like so much of our life here is repetitive. We do the same thing over and over again. But most of us don't plan for anything spectacular. Most of us don't plan to be like a Barack Obama. We don't, not everybody does that. Most people don't. They don't plan to come in to be someone like Brad Pitt. It just doesn't happen very often. Most of us just have ordinary lives. And the thing that's really hard to understand is most of planet Earth only lives on a few dollars a day. It's very they're just the experience that we have here in the United States isn't what it's like for most of the world. It's much more difficult in most of the world, most of the planet. But everybody chooses that. Everybody comes here for a specific reason. Every single person does. And people that feel like, what am I here for? What am I doing? And I always think of the quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, the purpose of life is to live it, to live your life, to pursue goals, love your family, go to college, do the things you want to pursue, have the fun you want to have, love people, try to make a difference with your life. There's a great quote I love from the Dalai Lama, and he said, our prime purpose in this life is to help others. And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. And I think if every one of us could just do that, the earth would be a paradise.
Oh, that was beautiful. And it correlates to what you were saying earlier. I think that's probably something that's gonna stick with me is that feeling of how others have impacted you. And it's so beautiful that this all aligns because I think I reached a point earlier this week and I was just like, I feel like I have to constantly be reminded why I'm here and I
Yeah.
get in very creative and new ways why I'm here. What you said made so much sense to me because there's a young lady that I knew when I was like a teenager and I used to perform these like it was just we used to like kind of perform like Bible stories for like schools and we used to come to the school and I just like this young lady she just kind of like stood beneath me and one day I missed the day and I came back and she didn't recognize me. I thought we were like very best friends. She's like I didn't recognize you without your smile. And today, I don't know her name. I don't remember what she looks like. I don't even remember the name of the school or anything about her. However, I responded to her saying that to me, it stays with me and it actually was like a lifeline for me to kind of understand like what's the purpose? Like it's like maybe it's just being someone like she was to me. Like I don't have to be remembered for my name or but just how I treated you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that feeling gave me life. And when you said that earlier, I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. Like that feels like heaven that like if I was to navigate this life moving on, is how can I make sure that when I get back, all I can feel is like the wonderful things that people felt because I was intentional about trying my best to love them or trying my
Yeah.
best to understand and listen. And maybe that did feel good for someone and maybe I won't know until after. But
Yeah. Yeah.
now that you've had this NDE experience and we're coming so close, so if you want to, after this, kind of share how people can connect with you or any final words. My final question to you is about do you see any beauty in this life? Like, have your lenses shifted from that time that you were depressed in 2 months? And you probably shared this with us throughout this experience together, but if you can point out some examples of like what is beautiful about this earth, if there's anything that you can conjure up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's everywhere there's beauty here. There's beautiful things, the relationships that we have with people, our love for our children, our learning, our growing, our developing. Even just looking at a beautiful flower is beautiful. Looking at pine trees, taking walks in nature, taking a fun family vacation, being able to buy the house of your dreams or buy the car of your dreams. All the things that there's still a lot of wonderful things to do here on this planet. It's not all just work and going through tough times. We all will go through those tough times, but there's also really happy times too. The love of your family, having everybody around you, doing fun activities, even just buying somebody a present when they weren't expecting it. Little things like that can make a huge difference in terms of people's happiness. And I think one of the biggest things is trying to help other people, trying to live a life that isn't self serving, but you live a life of trying to help as many people as you can. I think that's why we're all here to learn and to grow and then to also help people.
Are there any things that you can highlight specifically for you? Any stories or cases? Was it your children or was it you met a person one day and your story impacted them? What are some specific, I can't say the word, what are some
Yeah.
examples in your life, like John? What are the earth experiences that you appreciate that you would share with us or any?
I think probably the most significant thing for me is meeting my wife. And I think that God may have sent her to me to help me because I was born with, I had a really tough childhood. I had severe learning disabilities and I never had a normal life as a child. And I never thought that I would ever get married or have a family or any of the things that people do here. Well, I met her when I was 21 at a church, and we became friends, knew each other for years and years. And we actually ended up getting married when we were in our early 30s. And we had 2 kids together. And I think that she was sent to help me because I really didn't have anybody in my life who understood what I had gone through when I had that NDE. But she had read all kinds of books. She was on the spiritual path too. And we met and it just seemed to work out really well that she understood everything that I was experiencing and understood that why I'm supposed to tell people that there is no death.
This is it. That's it. I appreciate you. Is there any places where you want people to share?
Absolutely. If any of your listeners want to ask me questions, they're free to email me. My email is johnjdavis65@icloud.com. And they can also go to my website and they can look at some of the buildings and see the things that I saw. And that is it's johnjdavisnde.com.
All right. Thank you, John. I appreciate you sharing your time. Have a good one.
It was so nice meeting you, Danny. Yeah, you have a beautiful smile.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much. Great to meet you.
You as well. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Breathe.